What would you do if everything you had, your wealth, your mansion, your cars, your influence, suddenly disappeared? Would the people around you still love you? Would they still call you their friend, their partner, their family? Or would the glitter of money vanish, taking with it the affection and loyalty you thought were yours? This was the question that haunted Adrian Cole, a man who seemingly had it all, yet felt he had nothing. Adrian was a billionaire. He lived in a palatial mansion that stretched across rolling hills, its glass windows reflecting the morning sun, its gardens perfectly trimmed like carpets of emerald. Luxury surrounded him. Yet within, he carried an emptiness no amount of marble floors or golden chandeliers could fill. He could summon a fleet of cars with the press of a button, but he could not summon genuine love. People smiled at him, but their eyes always darted toward his wallet, his cars, his house. Women admired him, but admiration quickly turned to expectation, expensive gifts, grand vacations, promises of security. Friends surrounded him, but when he stripped away the parties and champagne, silence followed. Adrian knew what they wanted. They wanted his fortune, not his heart. And so one night, lying awake in his vast bedroom, staring at the ceiling painted with constellations, Adrian whispered to himself a question. What if I disappeared as the rich man? What if I became someone else? Someone poor? Who would still stand beside me then? The idea grew in him like a seed that demanded water. By dawn, it was no longer a thought, it was a plan. He would leave his mansion, his wealth, and his name behind. He would step into the shoes of the invisible, the unnoticed, the ordinary. He would disguise himself as a gatekeeper, a man whose only task was to open and close the gates of a modest residential estate. He wanted to strip himself down to nothing, to see who might still value him for the man beneath the fortune. Adrian arranged it quietly. His lawyer was sworn to secrecy, his staff dismissed on generous leave, and his mansion locked behind security systems. He chose a distant neighborhood, not too far from the city, where people knew nothing of him. There, he found an old caretaker job opening, a gatehouse at the entrance of an apartment compound. The work was simple. Greet tenants, open the gate, watch the night, and keep records. On the day he arrived, he wore plain, faded clothes, his hair unstyled, his shoes worn down at the edges. He looked like any man struggling to get by. Gone was the tailored suit, the glossy car, the aura of wealth. When he introduced himself as Cole, simply Cole, nobody blinked. Nobody bowed. Nobody tried to flatter him. He was just the new gatekeeper. At first, the treatment stung. Some residents barely acknowledged him, tossing keys or commands his way as though he were invisible. Others made snide remarks about his clothes or posture. To them, he was just the poor gateman, a man with no voice, no power, no wealth. The difference was stark. Adrian realized how much people's respect for him had always been bought by his riches. Stripped of them, he was just another man at the bottom rung of society. But amidst the indifference and condescension, there were glimmers of light. One such light was a woman named Eliana. She lived in the smallest apartment of the block, a teacher at a nearby school. She carried herself with quiet dignity, never rushed, never arrogant. Unlike the others, she always greeted Cole with a warm smile, as though she saw him as more than a gatekeeper. She would pause at the gate, ask him how his day was, sometimes bring him a sandwich or a flask of tea. "Have you eaten?" she would ask with genuine concern. "Yes," he would reply, though often he hadn't. But her kindness warmed him more than any food could. Days turned to weeks, and their conversations grew. They talked about books, about life, about dreams. Eliana spoke of her students, her hopes to open a small community library, her belief that knowledge was the greatest gift. She never asked him about money, never demanded anything beyond his presence. She laughed easily, listened intently, and treated him with a respect that seemed foreign to the world he knew. Adrian found himself looking forward to her visits. He discovered in her a purity that he had long thought extinct. With Eliana, he was not the billionaire or the gatekeeper. He was simply a man, and she saw him as enough. But still, Adrian kept his secret. Nights would come when he sat in the small gatehouse, staring at the dark streets, wrestling with the truth he hid. Would she still smile at him if she knew? Would her kindness survive the revelation that he was not poor, but wealthy beyond measure? One evening, the rain poured heavily, flooding the streets. Eliana arrived late, drenched, her umbrella broken by the wind. Adrian rushed to shelter her inside the gatehouse, offering her his only blanket. She laughed at her own disheveled state, water dripping from her hair, but he looked at her and thought she had never seemed more beautiful. "Why are you always so kind to me?" he asked suddenly, unable to stop himself. Eliana looked at him surprised. "Because kindness is not about who someone is, but about who I choose to be. You deserve respect as much as anyone else. Don't you know that?" Her words struck him deeply. For the first time in years, Adrian felt tears sting his eyes. He realized that this woman had given him what no amount of money had ever bought: dignity without condition, affection without agenda. The days that followed weighed heavy with anticipation. Adrian knew he could not keep the truth hidden forever. The time to reveal himself was near. And so, he invited Eliana for a walk one Sunday afternoon, away from the apartment blocks, to the gardens of a nearby estate, one he secretly owned. As they walked, he stopped by a grand gate, the kind she had never seen before. With trembling hands, Adrian unlocked it and led her inside. She gasped at the vast mansion that stretched before her, its walls gleaming in the sun. "Why are we here?" she asked, bewildered. Adrian turned to her, his voice unsteady. "Because this is my home. I am not just Cole, the gatekeeper. My real name is Adrian Cole. I am the man who owns this house, this estate, this fortune. But none of that mattered to me anymore. I needed to know if anyone could see me. The man, not the money. That is why I lived as a gateman. That is why I met you." Eliana stood frozen, her eyes wide, her heart racing. The truth hung in the air like thunder before rain. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "So all this time, you were testing me?" Adrian nodded, his face etched with vulnerability. "I was searching. I was desperate to find someone real, and in you, I did." Silence stretched. Adrian feared the worst, that she would walk away, feel betrayed, feel deceived. But then Eliana's eyes softened. She stepped closer and took his hand. "Cole, Adrian, whoever you are," she said, "I cared for you because of the way you listened, the way you respected me, the way you treated life with humility even when you had little. If you are the same man standing here, then the mansion does not change that. The wealth does not change that. I valued the man, not the mask." In that moment, Adrian felt a weight lift from his soul. For the first time, he was truly seen. Not as a billionaire, not as a benefactor, but as a human being worthy of love. From then on, their bond only grew stronger. Adrian returned to his mansion, but he no longer lived in isolation. Eliana became his partner, his confidant, his anchor. She reminded him daily that the worth of a man is not in his riches, but in his heart. And so, the story ends not with riches flaunted, but with riches redefined. Adrian discovered the truth many spend lifetimes searching for. Money can buy attention, admiration, and even envy, but it can never buy love. Love is found in the eyes that see you when you have nothing, in the hands that hold you when the world looks away, in the heart that beats for the person you are, not for the treasures you hold. So remember this: the greatest treasure you can ever own is not a mansion, not a car, not gold or jewels. It is the soul who loves you for you, stripped of wealth, stripped of status, stripped of pretense. For when the world fades and fortune crumbles, only true love remains, and that, dear listener, is the wealth that never perishes.